Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Thursday. Welcome to Thursday,
Last day of the week.
last day of the week. Tomorrow's a professional development day for me, so I've got to work, but you have the day off, so
Last work too with ours.
you can do whatever you need to do. I'm going to say hello quickly to Blake. Hello, good morning, Blake. I'm going to say hello to Michelle. Good morning, Michelle. And to Irene. Good morning, Irene. And to Hadil as well. Good morning, Hadil. Okay, so yesterday, talking about Rome, right? And we're hearing a little bit about this transition to a republic, right? And so Rome is kind of founded in 753 BC. 753 BC, but it's under the control of Etruscan kings, right? And so we read a little bit of the text yesterday talking about how the geography and the sort of topography of Rome itself helped it and hindered it in its history, right? And we said that, what do we say for the sort of topography of Rome? How is that beneficial?
The hills provide protection from the river,
Yeah, so the hills Rome, there are 7 hills in Rome, and hills are useful to you in the ancient world because you can put yourself on top of them and build a wall and hopefully repel any invaders from there. There's a river that allows people to sail up and down and trade. What else?
since we're the river, it's always get floods. So in order for the attackers to attack, it can take the time to pass.
Yeah, the river, the Tiber has a lot of marshy, mucky shores to it, right? And again, that's not good if you want to invade the city because it's very difficult to get out of your boat and get onto the shore, right? And meanwhile, while you're struggling through the mud in all of your armor, people are shooting arrows at you, and it's not good, right? So the river actually helps protect the Romans, as do the hills, right? What else? What else? What else? What else? There's something about the sea. Yeah, they had a port. They had a port that they could import and export things from, but at the same time, it was far enough away from the city that it was difficult to attack from the sea, right? You'd have to land your ships and sort of march overland, right? And then the Romans would kind of know you were coming, right? Yeah, I think that's what we were talking about. So we said that the Rome is kind of right, more or less in the middle of what we know today to be Italy. That was a very useful location for it in the past when it sort of went about conquering all of Italy. But again, as the Roman Empire continued to expand, it became more difficult because Rome was suddenly a long way away from everything, right? And the edges of the empire was where all of the activity was happening, right? That's where they were repelling the barbarians and taking over things, and Rome was a long way away from that. And in the ancient world, distance is a real thing, right? Because they can't communicate with people like we can. You have to actually send people with a letter to, issue commands to people at the other end of the empire. And it takes a long time, right? Right, so here's our kind of topographic map of Rome, I guess, if you will, with the various hills that you may hear about as we go forward. We said that the Romans learned a lot from the Etruscans. We watched that little section of the video yesterday, and again, they were the power in Italy prior to the Romans. Very technologically advanced. The Romans will kind of borrow and inherit a lot of things from the Etruscans, but the Etruscans were not a perfect people either, and so while they were very talented craftsmen and artists, they had these gladiatorial matches where slaves would fight to the death at the funeral of a prominent man, right? So, not a utopia by any means, but so yesterday we read a little section of the text with kind of some founding myths of Rome, and we said that they were weird, right? How are these founding myths kind of weird? They're more tragic? Okay. In what way? Yeah, there's kind of lots of awfulness at the beginning of Rome, right? So there's one brother killing another one, right? After these, and he's a twin too, which I don't know, it makes it seem. Can you imagine killing someone who looked exactly like you? Yikes. So yeah, we have these two boys that are raised by a wolf in the wilderness. They go on to build two cities, but in the process of building them, one brother kills the other one and becomes the king, right? So yeah, that's awful. What's going on with the story of Lucretia? What's going on with Lucretia?
She got killed.
She did? By whom?
By the son of the last
Yeah, the son of the last king, Tarquin, rapes Lucretia. Who is Lucretia, by the way?
wife of
She's what?
She's wife of another.
Yeah, she's wife of a respected Roman, right? And what's her thing? What's she like? Yeah, she's kind of the epitome of an ideal Roman woman, right? She's respectful. Good morning. She's respectful. She's, loyal to her husband. And on Saturday night, when all the other Etruscan girls are running around partying, Lucretia is, weaving in her room, right? In a very loyal, respectful, productive way, right? And again, she's raped by the son of the king, by the son of Tarquin. I forget what the son's name is, but I guess it doesn't really matter. Sorry, I'm just going to skip by that. Yeah, and so she asks her husband to avenge her, but she commits suicide because she's been dishonored to this degree, right? And so, enraged, the Romans throw the Tarquins out and establish their republic. But again, in reality, it probably doesn't happen that quickly. Again, they throw the Etruscans out, but they have to fight with the Etruscans for about 100 years to make sure, good morning, to make sure that, to finally kick them out of Rome for good. And again, republics aren't created overnight either. So it's kind of probably a long period of, fighting to try and keep the Etruscans out while trying to create their own governmental system on the inside. But they do create it, right? And they create this republic, this res publica. The only other kind of, I guess, legendary Roman who I don't know if he existed or not, was this guy here, Lucius Quinticus Cincinnatus. And again, he's the model for a Roman, maybe not totally Roman men, but like a Roman general, a Roman military guy, a guy who takes up the powers of dictator, so he has sole power in Rome while they're fighting off the barbarians. But then when the threat is over, Cincinnatus gives up his power and returns to his farm, right? He cares nothing for, he's not power mad or power hungry, trying to hold on to his supreme power. He freely gives it up, in service of Rome, right? Everybody, all the Romans are like, oh, Cincinnatus, right? What an inspiration. And again, he was an inspiration to Romans, but also to later historical figures as well. And I mentioned that the first U.S. president here, George Washington, he kind of pulls a Cincinnatus at the end of the Revolutionary War. He's a general, and he makes a big show of resigning his being a general, and then kind of going back to his farm to lead a simple life, right? So he doesn't clutch onto power, trying to hold on to it. He freely gives it up, in service of the country, and then he goes back home to, tend the land, right? So it's a very, it's an inspirational thing to Romans, but again, it's inspirational to much later historical figures as well. I also showed you this. This will be important as we go forward, to sort of just to have a brief understanding of how the Roman Republic works. Of course, it's far more complicated than this, but I thought this would help you get a bit of a picture. So technically, Rome has two consuls, right? And the consuls kind of replace the role of king. There's always two of them, and they're always elected. And they always have to agree on everything. So one consul can veto the other, okay? So again, it keeps one person from taking too much power. You can't do anything unless the other consul agrees with you, right? And again, both are elected. The other thing we'll see going forward is that the Romans are just like, remember the Greeks, when they threw out their tyrants, they really didn't want a monarchy after that. They didn't want a monarchy ever again. And the Romans kind of had the same bad taste in their mouth. So when they threw out Tarquin and the rest of the Etruscan kings, or the rest of the Etruscan royal family, they kind of had a bad taste in their mouth regarding kings, to the point where the word king, the Latin word for king, which is rex, the Romans would kind of say it with like distaste, like, ugh, rex, like it had a negative connotation, is what I'm saying. It's an unpleasant word, rex. Ugh. Yep. Yeah, from the Latin and the Greek. So we talked about tyrants before. Tyrants. Saurid is, I think it's the Latin for lizard, but I'm not sure, even though dinosaurs are not lizards, but when they named them, people thought they were. So yeah, it's basically tyrant, lizard, king. Tyrannosaurus Rex. Yeah. So they borrowed heavily from the Greeks and the Romans to name that creature. But but it's the same thing. But Rex would be a word that the Romans would be like, ugh, right? Rex. Gross. Below the consuls, there's an assembly, and the assembly kind of does most of the work of government. They pass laws and talk about taxation and debate things and vote on things. That's where kind of most of the political activity happens, okay? The assembly is made up of patricians and plebeians, and we said patricians were kind of the elite families of Rome, descended from the original 100 senators. The plebeians are basically everyone else. They have representatives in the assembly, but the patrician votes count more. So it's not one person, one vote. They kind of vote in blocks, and some blocks are worth more than others. So the patricians have more power in the assembly than the plebeians do. And because of that, they introduced this new position called tribune, right? And the tribune is a member of the plebeians, right? So he's a normal person, but they also have special powers, and probably their most important power is that to veto things, right? And veto is still a word that we use today. It's Latin for I forbid, and it allows the tribunes to stop something from happening. So again, if the patricians say, okay, we're going to introduce a new tax, but only plebeians will have to pay it, right? The patricians can do that because they have power, and they might even be able to vote it through in the assembly. but the tribunes can stand up and say, veto, right? I forbid you from doing that. And so they won't be able to pass the law. So again, the tribunes can't really make things happen that way, but they can stop them from happening. And again, we see some echoes of this today because, for instance, the US president has a veto, right? And we saw Donald Trump threaten to use that veto a number of times. So he can actually stop things. The president can stop things from happening just like a tribune can. Yes, he can also do that. Yes, so they can introduce laws, but they're not able to pass them on their own, and you would definitely need the support of the patricians to pass something. For simplicity's sake, their big power is the veto, but they can do other things as well, for sure. In the middle here, we have kind of magistrates. People get elected to magistracies as well, and I've listed a bunch of them there. I can't remember what they all do. Dictators, of course, get sole power. If there's an emergency, in a time of emergency in Rome, the dictator basically becomes a king and can do anything they want in order to defend Rome. It's usually a temporary position. I think it's for 6 months. So if you're elected a dictator, you're dictator for 6 months. We have censors who do sort of the counting, and we do this and take care of the census. I forget what praetors do. I think praetors are judges, I think is what they are. So judges are elected. There's a bunch of different magistracies that are kind of government positions that you get elected to. And then finally at the top we have the Senate, right? So Senate, we have retired magistrates, retired consuls, and they pass laws of their own, but they also give advice to the consuls, right? So the guys in the Senate are kind of the oldest, most respected Romans. They've held a lot of political office. They've served in the military. They've got a lot of experience, right? And so the Senate is there to, again, they pass some of their own laws, but they also advise the consuls about what decisions they should make. Okay. Make sense so far? All right. What do I have next? Oh yeah, the other thing we should probably mention very quickly. I'm just going to jump back. That's 16. We talked about basic Roman values yesterday. What were some of those values? What did Romans think was important? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rome. For the Romans, Rome came first, right? I can't say the same here. I like Vancouver, but it doesn't come first in my life, right? But for the Romans, it did, right? The city came first. Rome came first, then the gods, then the community, then your family, and then you, right? That was the order of importance, right? Your personal wants or personal desires were the last to be considered. Your community, your gods, and Rome came before everything else, right? What else do we hear about Roman values? What Romans were like? Yeah, so they use authoritas, dignitas, gravitas, right? So authority, dignity, and seriousness, right? So the Romans, you can imagine, were not a super emotional people, right? They prized keeping their emotions under control, which is interestingly very different from the modern day Italians, who the stereotype is that they are very expressive with their emotions and the hands and all of that. The Romans would have been very different, right? The Romans prize being serious, controlled, a lot of dignity, a lot of gravitas, very serious, right? The Romans would have been very serious kind of people. Oh, yeah, I think it would have been the city comes first. Well, actually, let me just think about it. Do the gods come first? There's probably not a clear order, or at least I've forgotten what it is. But Rome, the community, the gods, those things come first, right? Your personal desires are at the bottom, right? You don't, again, here in the West, we're very individualistic, you do you kind of thing. The Romans don't believe in you do you. The Romans believe in you do what's best for Rome, right? That's what you do. Okay, so I've got, did I jump too far? I think I did, yep. Oh, maybe I'll show you this too. Yeah, I will show you this. The other, actually, we're gonna see this right away. We're gonna read about it, but I'll show it to you now that it's on the screen. There is kind of a ladder of public office that you should climb, okay? And so here, if you want to be, if you want to enter government, if you want to be a government employee or hold a government office in Rome, there's a series of kind of steps you have to go through. So you can't just be consul, tomorrow, right? You can't just decide to be consul and get elected. Consul is a long ladder, right? So, if you're a plebeian, for instance, then basically what you can do is you can be elected as a tribune, right? That's kind of the highest thing you can aspire to. The patricians have more options, but of course the line between them gets blurred as the Republic goes on. But if you're a patrician and you want to be consul, well, first you have to be elected to a quaestorship. So you can see here that the quaestors, I'm glad it's here because I forgot, they manage financial and administrative matters. So they're kind of government workers, if you will, who are responsible for budgets and spending and things like that. If you will, they're kind of the ancient equivalent or the Roman equivalent of a financial controller. Every company usually has a financial controller, someone who keeps track of the books, and that's what quaestors do, right? There's 20 of them in Rome as well. If you're successful in that, then after that you can run as a deal. And let's see here. Yeah, aediles look after public buildings, the food supply, gladiator games, things like that, right? So aediles have kind of special functions, but you can get elected to that after you become a quaestor. Then, if you're even more lucky and well thought of, you can be elected to be a praetor. And so, yeah, praetors are judges, right? They administer Roman law. That's who you go before if you're charged with a crime. And then finally, if you have managed to climb all those steps and you're still alive, you may run for consul, right? And there's only 2 consuls every year in the Roman Republic. It's very prestigious, to the point where, remember we saw that bust yesterday of Cato the Elder? That would be something that if one of your ancestors was consul, you would probably have a bust, like a statue of them in your house. And then again, when people came over to your house, you could say, look, my great grandfather was consul in this year. And that was like a big bragging point for your family. So all of these kind of positions carry kind of prestige and power with them. But of course, the higher you get, the more prestigious, the more kind of status you would get from it. But again, if you want to be consul, it's a long road, right? You've got to hold all of these other government positions first, and I think you need 10 years service in the military as well. So you can't just walk into a consulship, right? It's a long road for you. And so, in theory, only the most experienced, well thought of, wise people wind up being elected to consul, right? It's a big deal. Big deal. And then again, when you retire from these positions, you can join the Senate, and the Senate is kind of, again, they pass some laws, they take care of foreign policy, as you can see, or propose, sorry, they can propose laws. But they're an advising body, right? They give advice to the consuls and to others. And again, the senators carry a lot of weight, right? There's a lot of authoritas and dignitas and gravitas, right? All of those things the Senate has a lot of. So when the Senate says to you, you should probably think about doing this, you'd probably be smart to do it, right? There's a lot of experience there. Okay, so I have a little bit for you to read here, just 2 pages, on the Cursus Honorum, which is basically what we were just looking at, but I'll let you read about it. The main offices of the Roman government you'll read about, which we just had a little taste of there. The Roman gods, which I think there was a request for yesterday, which we'll read about. Was that not a little bit, yeah. More or less. It's a short section, so it's okay. And then we'll read about this position of Pontifex Maximus, which will also come up a little bit later. So just 2 pages to read, a few questions to answer. I'll give you about 8 minutes to do that, and then we'll talk about it, okay? 8 minutes. Okay, good people. So, very quickly, what is this Cursus Honorum thing? Yeah, it's kind of a ladder of political, of your political career or or political offices that you can rise to the top if you're lucky enough and talented enough, and if you have enough autoritas and gravitas and dignitas, right? Um, so lots of restrictions, right? The 10-year military service is there. Each office has a minimum age that you need to be before you can run for it. You kind of have to climb the ladder in an order, so you can't just be praetor or consul the first time. You have to kind of climb your way up. And then there's the 10-year thing for consuls, right? If you are a consul, you can't become consul again for another 10 years. But think about how old someone is by the time that they get to be consul, right? Because where's my yeah, like if you enter the army when you're 18, you do 10 years of military service, so you're 28. You've got to be these three things for at least a year, right? So 29, 30, 31. And so, maybe you can become consul by 32 or 33 years of age if you're lucky and if you just go boom, 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 boom all the way up. But, well, did it say that? Is there a 40 year for consul? Yeah. So even then, you can't be. Even if you climb the ladder really quickly, you couldn't be consul until you're 40, right? Which for the ancient world is getting pretty old. Right. So the patricians get a little advantage, right? But even so, it's a long ladder, right? Then there's lots of restrictions, and you have to get elected to all of these, right? So you have to have enough kind of public, what's the word I'm looking for? Support? Yeah. You need enough public support, or at least support from people around you to say, yeah, this person is a competent, qualified, intelligent person. We should vote him in. So you have to compete all the way through, right? You're going to have to compete with a bunch of people who want to be quaestors, right? You're going to have to compete with a bunch of people who want to be praetors. And so, yeah, it's a very competitive ladder to climb. And as they mentioned, not everyone's going to be able to climb it, right? Only, in theory, I guess only the best or the brightest or the most influential Romans will be able to make their way up to become consul, right? Which again is a huge deal, right? It's a huge deal to be a consul. Where's my page here? There we go. Okay, so we've covered kind of the main offices, I think. We heard about some of the Roman gods, right? And so, again, they're basically the Greek gods that have been plagiarized or borrowed or whatever you want to call it from Greece, right? So we've got we've got Jupiter and Juno, we've got Minerva, we've got Venus, we've got Mars. God of the underworld is Pluto. Who else am I missing? What's that? Who else am I missing? Mercury, right? With the Greek Hermes, the messenger, becomes Mercury. What's that? Yeah, Mars, the god of war, formerly Ares from Greece. So yeah, we have kind of the same gods, mostly responsible for the same things, but kind of reimagined as Romans. Yeah.
You mentioned here Loca Maxima had its own fashion models.
So who?
We don't have to name it, but Loca Maxima.
Is it in the text or is it somewhere else?
It's in the text,
Um, what page is it on?
233.
232?
233.
233.
It's in the small inside the picture. Last 4 lines.
Oh. Cloassa Maxima? The, go- the, the goddess of the sewer system? Oof.
No, that we have, they all had its own platforms.
Yeah, there are these kind of big important gods like Juno and Jupiter and the ones we know, but there's also lots of smaller kind of less well known or less important gods. So the sewer system has its own god in ancient Rome. What's that?
I don't want to do that.
No, you don't want to be that. But I mean, when your toilet gets clogged, I mean, you got to pray to somebody, right? So Jupiter's busy with other things. You've got to pray to someone. So that's who you pray to, I guess. Weird, but the ancient world was different. What's this Pontifex Maximus thing? Pontifex Maximus. I guess a little bit like a pope. I guess in a way. In what ways are they like a pope? Yeah, they're kind of the Pontifex Maximus is like the head of Roman religion. So you get elected to this post. You're responsible for, planning and executing all of the rituals and ceremonies. You oversee the Temple of Vesta with the Vestal virgins tending the flame. We'll get to them later. You're kind of responsible for making sure that Roman religion is kind of organized and happening as it should be. Interestingly, it's a post that you hold for life. So if you get elected to it, you become Pontifex Maximus for life. And yeah, it's another political or religious office. It's not on the Cursus Honorum. It's not on the ladder, but it's another thing that you could be elected to do, but for life in this case. Okay, let me see where I am here. Oh yeah, there's that. Okay, let's take a little break, and when we come back, we'll try to get a sense of maybe what life would have been like in Rome for young men and for young women. Okay? Okay, and we are back. So, where's my questions? Yeah. So, talked about this ladder in which men specifically can climb if they want to have political careers in Rome. And we said it's kind of a long, complicated process. There's age limits. You have to have 10 years of military service and not die in the process. Um, and you have to get elected to all of these positions, and there's a lot of competition. So, in theory, only kind of the best and brightest Romans are going to find their way into the office of consul, at least in theory, anyway. Um, I wanted to take a few minutes here just to look into the life of young people, well, people in general, in ancient Rome. And so I have a short video to show you here on the life of this one young man. His name is Lucius Papidius Secundus. Romans all have three names, and Lucius here is no exception. We'll kind of get a little bit of a window into his life. As you can see, he's 17 years old. We'll hear a little bit about, the role of his father and other members of his family in his life, what he does during the day, and maybe a question, what do you think would be the best or worst part of being basically your age in ancient Rome? Okay, so for online people, I posted this video on Microsoft Teams, so we'll just watch it and then we'll come back and talk about some of these things, okay? So it's just a few minutes long, so we'll see you in just a couple minutes when the video's done. Okay, so that's a little bit in the future, right? Because Rome has an emperor at the point we were just seeing, and we're not there yet. But um, what kind of education does this young man get? Right? He's taught to read and write both Latin and Greek. What else? Yeah. Yeah, he's taught kind of how to run and fight and swim. So he's had some sort of a physical education from his father, right? But he's also had kind of an academic education that deals with reading and writing. But what else? What else is he taught in his academic education? Trading? Um, he- Maybe a little bit. He'll also he'll shadow his father there and go on business dealings. So he'll learn that way too. What else do they learn? What? History? Sure. What else? Remember he was standing up there? Friends, Romans, countrymen, yeah, lend me your ears, right? So yeah, public speaking is a skill and it's taught in Rome because that's how you convince people, right? The republic is democratic, right? It's based on votes and it's based on arguments, just like we saw in ancient Athens with the Athenians on the Pnyx arguing, making arguments back and forth, and then the assembly would vote on them. That's how you get things done. You are persuasive, right? You can stand up in front of a huge group of Romans and get them to see things the way that you see them, right? The king and the republic? We'll get there. Yeah, it's a complicated situation, but there is an answer to your question. But I don't want to spoil it, so we'll wait. But there is an answer. Yeah, so public speaking is important to the Romans, right? The idea that you need to be able to convince people. And in fact, this is a bit of a jump ahead anyway, but this is one of the things that Julius Caesar is really good at. Caesar is a good speaker. Caesar knows how to influence his audience, right? So that'll be an important skill for Lucius here, or for any Roman who wants to who wants to gain prestige and power. What's Lucius's father? What's his role? Or what's he kind of responsible for? He what? Yeah. Yeah, so he seems to be kind of a businessman. He has a bunch of clients. We haven't talked about the patron client system, but we will on Monday. He has a bunch of clients and freedmen kind of following him around, like an entourage, if you will. Yeah, and he does business dealings, right? Particularly for Lucius, who is too young. What else does his father do? What's that? Makes decisions? Like what kind of decisions? Yeah, he arranges his son's marriage, right, to a girl who is shockingly and uncomfortably younger than Lucius is. Lucius is only 17, which I would argue is too young to get married, but 7 and 8 years old is far too young to get married. But things happen pretty early in the ancient world, right? Lucius's younger brother is coming of age at 15, so he's an adult now in some ways. So that's young. 15 seems young. What kind of things do we see them doing during the day, Lucius and his father? And yeah, right. We see them go to the baths, right? Because not everyone has bathing facilities in their home, and so you go to the public bath to clean yourself. We see them having dinner that evening, right? Reclining on, these couches and eating while servants pour drinks for them. We see the two young guys drinking a little too much and throwing up. That's gross. What else do we see? Kind of, yeah. They go to the Forum, and the Forum is kind of the center of Rome. There's lots of temples and public buildings and statues, and so they kind of wander through the Forum and relive Rome's glory, I guess. What else? Anything else? Yeah, he's the Roman fathers have a lot of power in the household. They are the pater familias. They're the father of the family, and so they have full authority, full control of all of the family. All of the assets are owned by the head of the family, and the father kind of makes all the decisions, right, in terms of what his kids' education should be, who they should marry. He does all their business deals for them. All of those things. But the father also provides for and teaches his kids, right, and creates opportunities for them as well. So the father is an important figure in Lucius's life here, right? Not only support but also teaching him things, right? What do you think? Best and worst part of being a Roman? Having to marry a child. Yeah, that would be unnerving. Of course, probably would have been totally normal for the Romans to do such a thing, but that's a little bit that's not entirely what we're used to. What else? Well, not yet. We'll look into the life of women in just a few minutes. But yeah, we didn't hear really anything about. Yeah, we didn't hear anything about women. Mostly, I think, because there's a second video, so we'll see that. Yeah, sounds like it was pretty lucky, right? Here in the modern world, we just assume everyone will survive to 15. But again, in the ancient world, not the case. A lot of kids die before the age of 2. So there's a high infant mortality. There's lots of women who die in childbirth, and there is, kids die when they're young. What do they die of? Why? Well, there's really not much in the way of medicine at the time, and little kids are still, they're sort of fragile, and their bodies are not really strong enough to resist certain pathogens and diseases like adults are, and so they tend to die. A lot of them tend to die quite young. Criminal acts? Oh yeah, no. They were basically saying that there are Rome actually creates high-rise apartments, and so there's lots of buildings in Rome that are multiple levels, small apartments, but they're all made out of wood, and because people are using lamps and candles and things to light the inside, they tend to burn down pretty frequently. So, okay, let's now look at the life of women and young women in Rome. So again, we'll meet this young woman named Domitia, and so we'll see kind of what maybe her typical day is. We'll talk about the differences between her day and the day of Lucius, who we just saw. And yeah, maybe similar question, okay? So online people, the video is again in Microsoft Teams. Watch it, come back here, we'll talk about it.
Today we are going to look at the world of Rome through the eyes of a young girl. Here she is, drawing a picture of herself in the atrium of her father's enormous house. Her name is Domitia, and she is just 5 years old. She has an older brother who is 14, Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus, named after her dad. Girls don't get these long names that boys have. What is worse is that Dad insists on calling all his daughters Domitia.
Domitia!
Let's call her Domitia, drawing on the column Domitia 3. She has an older sister, Domitia 2, who is 7 years old, and then there is Domitia 1, who is 10. There would have been a Domitia 4, but Mum died trying to give birth to her 3 years ago. Confused, the Romans were too. They could work out ancestry through the male line with the nice tripartite names such as Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus. But they got in a real mess over which Domitia was married to whom, and was either the great aunt or the great stepmother, and so on to whom when they came to write it down. Domitia 3 is not just drawing on the pillar, she is also watching the action. You see, it's early, and the time of day when all her dad's clients and friends come to see him at home to pay their respects. Lucius Papidius Secundus, a 17-year-old who wants to marry Domitia 2 within the next 5 to 7 years, has come as well. He seems to be wooing not his future wife, but her dad. Poor Lucius, he does not know that Domitia's dad thinks he and his family are wealthy, but still scumbags from the Suburra. After all, it is the part of Rome full of barbers and prostitutes. Suddenly, all the men are leaving with Dad. It's the second hour, and time for him to be in court with a sturdy audience of clients to applaud his rhetoric and hiss at his opponent. The house is now quieter. The men won't return for 7 hours, not until dinner time. But what happens in the house for those 7 hours? What do Domitia, and Domitia do all day? Not an easy question. Everything written down by the Romans that we have today was written by men. This makes constructing the lives of women difficult. However, we can't have a history of just Roman men, so here goes. We can begin in the atrium. There is a massive loom on which Dad's latest wife is working on a new toga. Domitia, and Domitia are tasked with spinning the wool that will be used to weave this mighty garment, 30 or more feet long and elliptical in shape. Romans loved the idea that their wives work wool. We know that because it's written on the gravestones of so many Roman women. Unlike women in Greece, Roman women go out the house and move about the city. They go to the baths in the morning to avoid the men, or to separate baths that are for women only. Some do go in for the latest fad of the AD 70s, nude bathing with men present. Where they have no place is where the men are, in the forum, in the law court, or in the Senate house. Their place in public is in the porticos, with gardens, with sculpture, and with pathways for walking in. When Domitia, and Domitia want to leave the house to go somewhere, like the portico of Livia, they must get ready. Domitia 2 and Domitia 3 are ready, but Domitia 1, who is betrothed to be married in 2 years to darling Philetus, isn't ready. She's not slow, she just has more to do. Being betrothed means she wears the insignia of betrothal, engagement rings, and all the gifts Philetus has given her. Jewels, earrings, necklaces, amber pendants. She may even wear her myrtle crown. All this bling shouts, I'm getting married to that 19-year-old who gave me all this stuff I'm wearing. Whilst they wait, Domitia 2 and Domitia 3 play with their dolls that mirror the image of their sister, decked out to be married. One day, these dolls will be dedicated to the household gods on the day of their wedding. Okay, we're ready. The girls step into litters carried by some burly slaves. They also have a chaperone with them, and will be meeting an aunt at the porticus of Livia. Carried high on the shoulders of these slaves, the girls look out through the curtains to see the crowded streets below them. They traverse the city, past the Colosseum, but then turn off to climb up the hill to the porticus of Livia. It was built by Livia, the wife of the first emperor Augustus, on the site of the house of Vedius Pollia. He wasn't such a great guy. He once tried to feed a slave to the eels in his fish pond for simply dropping a dish. Luckily, the emperor was at the dinner and tamed his temper. The litters are placed on the ground and the girls get out, and arm in arm, 2 by 2, they ascend the steps into the enclosed garden with many columns. Domitia 3 is shot off and is drawing on a column. Domitia 2 joins her, but seeks to read the graffiti higher up on the column. She spots a drawing of gladiators and tries to imagine seeing them fighting, something she will never be permitted to do, except from the very rear of the Colosseum. From there, she will have a good view of the 50,000 spectators, but will see little by way of blood and gore. If she really wanted a decent view, she could become a Vestal Virgin and would sit right down the front. But a career tending the sacred flame of Vesta is not for everybody's taste. Domitia 1 has met another 10-year-old, also decked out in the insignia of betrothal. Home time. When they get there, after the 8th hour, something is up. The smashed dish lies on the floor. All the slaves have been gathered together in the atrium and await the arrival of their master. Dad is going to go mad. He will not hit his children, but like many other Romans, he believes that slaves have to be punished. The whip lies ready for his arrival. No one knows who smashed the dish, but Dad will call the undertaker to torture it out of them if he must. The doorkeeper opens the front door to the house. A hush comes over the anxious slaves. In walks not their master, but instead a pregnant teenager. It is the master's eldest daughter, aged 15, who is already a veteran of marriage and childbirth. Guess what her name is? There is a 5 to 10% chance she won't survive giving birth to her child, but for now she has come to dinner with her family. As a teenage mother, she has proved that she is a successful wife by bringing children and descendants to her husband, who will carry on his name in the future. The family head off to the dining room and are served dinner. It would seem Dad has had an invite to dinner elsewhere. With dinner concluded, the girls cross the atrium to bid farewell to their older sister, who is carried home in a litter escorted by some of Dad's bodyguards. Returning to the house, the girls cross the atrium. The slaves, young and old, male and female, await the return of their owner. When he returns, he may exact vengeance, ensuring his power over the slaves is maintained through violence and terror, to which any slave could be subjected. But for the girls, they head upstairs for the night, ready for bed.
Okay. Okay. Well, I don't know about you guys, but that's exactly like the house I grew up in. Slaves, masters, litters with people carrying you down the street. Yep, nothing strange there. What's that?
Yeah, of course.
We do have cars now. Bodyguards. Yeah.
You actually live a better life than the master of that.
Well, we do, right? In terms of our kind of creature comforts, if you will. Yeah, we live very comfortable lives, more comfortable than, and we're still not enough, right? Yeah, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as enough. So I guess we don't really have a lot of time for this, but what strikes you as kind of being the best or worst part of that experience?
Looking the name so
Yeah, they are engaged at a very young age for sure. What's that? Yeah, their marriage is arranged by their father. Good question. Maybe I do not know. Do engagement rings come from ancient Rome? Is that where the custom comes from? Where the possession part, it definitely would have in the past, but it's still broadly symbolizes the same thing, that I am going to marry this guy, right? Whether it's possession or not is another story, but here it definitely is. Anything else? Yeah, the other thing maybe I'll just mention before we end is that certainly not all Romans would have lived the way that they do, right? You can tell that they are wealthy, right? Dad has a nice big house. He has lots of slaves and bodyguards to carry him around. He's got a bunch of clients, which we'll talk about on Monday. So this is Domitia's family is wealthy and powerful, right? Lucius's family that we saw before, his father has made money in business, but they're not quite so wealthy or powerful. And there was lots of people living in Rome who, had nothing.
So I always have this question for anyone from society. Do they have the situation between classes? They're so rich or they are so poor? Is it the same situation in the world? Either they have very wealthy people.
Oh. Yeah, it would depend. It kind of depends on the complexity of the society, I think. The more simple your society is, I think the more likely you just have a bunch of poor people and then the rich people at the top. I think in Rome you probably would have had, a lot of people in the middle, but I think you would have found that most people were reasonably poor, right? Like the modern world, we're supposed to have the middle class, right? Most people are supposed to be in the middle class, but that's a modern innovation. In the past, I think you would have found that most people kind of had very little and worked very hard, and then there was a few people on top that had more, and then you would have had a king who had like everything, sort of thing. So there would have been if there was a middle class at all, it would have been a lot smaller than the middle class that we have in a modern society, I would think. Okay, we are out of time. That is it. Have a good day tomorrow. Have a nice weekend. I will see you on Monday.